All right, welcome back to the channel. So, Shawn Showtime Porter says he wants a fight with Terence Crawford, and he can go about getting it two ways. Either one, he can become Terence Crawford's mandatory, or number two, Terence Crawford can act like he's got some sense and come over to the PBC and fight. And Shawn Porter says that might be the only way that Terence Crawford actually gets to fight the top welterweights. Shawn was talking some craziness about Errol Spence Jr. yesterday, but today on Terence, he is 100% on point. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. So we're going to talk about the welterweight division today. We've got a very big fight coming up this weekend with Danny Garcia challenging the IBF and WBC champion Errol Spence Jr. in Dallas, Texas. I will be at the event. If you see me at the event with a mask on and gloves and all kind of other stuff, hey, stop by and say what's up from about 6 feet away. But definitely going to be at that fight. Shawn Porter was in an interview talking about the fight. You know, he has this podcast and he's doing a lot of different interviews. So you get a lot of content and a lot of opinions out of Shawn Porter. But in this particular instance, he was talking about something that relates to him, which is, you know, what are you going to do next and how do you see the welterweight division playing out? And so there was a lot of things that were said by Keith Thurman, Errol Spence, and Terence Crawford, and Shawn Porter was giving his opinion as a broadcaster or a podcaster or whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what I call myself. Am I a vlogger or a blogger or a podcast? What is this? Whatever. When he's in there in front of a mic talking, he was saying that first, he really still believes that he beat Errol Spence, right? Like that is where he starts his conversation off of the assumption that he won that fight and feeling as if he still is the champion and that he is the best fighter in the welterweight division. I'm sure Shawn Porter feels that way. And he was asked about Errol Spence, or talked about Keith Thurman having called him out. He goes into Keith Thurman and then he goes into Terence Crawford. I talked in another video about the majority of what he was talking about, but this particular section I think deserves specific attention because he's talking about a fight between him and Terence Crawford, who are two of the five best welterweights in the world. Shawn Porter fought tooth and nails with Errol Spence Jr. Then you know he's a top welterweight. He's beaten Danny Garcia. You know he's a top welterweight. He went nip and tuck with Keith Thurman. You know he's a top welterweight. And what I was asking for last year, since Terence Crawford isn't fighting any top welterweights, is for Terence Crawford to fight Shawn Porter. It is a natural fight. It is a highly competitive fight. It is a better fight than any other fight that he can get with guys not named Errol Spence Jr. or really Errol Spence Jr. Even the Manny Pacquiao fight, I think, is going to be more difficult for the Shawn Porter is more difficult than the Manny Pacquiao fight for Terence Crawford. But it would literally be the first big time guy that Terence Crawford has fought at welterweight. Now, they were talking about that fight before, but Shawn has now changed his tune. I believe he changed his tune because he's got common sense and he realizes what's going on. If Shawn is going to get another championship, a shot at the championship belt, hey, the WBO is just as realistic as the WBC or the WBA is or the IBF is. And it is that way specifically for him, like he said in the interview, because he's ranked #1 by the WBO. So if he wants to petition and ask the WBO to make him the mandatory for Terence Crawford, he can do that. And so he said, I can take that route. I can be to force a Terence Crawford fight. He says, I can take the mandatory, or if Terence Crawford just act like you got some sense, when you get done with all that Bob Arum stuff, after you got, another year on your deal, then get rid of him, come on over here and make the fights. And I think Shawn Porter's 100% correct about that, man. Absolutely correct about that. Because, and what he talked about was, and we've talked about this before, that the simple fact that Bob Arum is involved in this fight makes the fight more expensive and harder to make. Because Bob Arum is a promoter and Bob Arum is not working for free. So if Bob Arum is involved, it could automatically increase the cost in the fight by 20%. Whatever his cut is that he gets off of from Terence Crawford, or let me rephrase, whatever he gets paid and he does not forward to Terence Crawford stays with him, right? So that creates a lot of extra expense. And there was one time that where I saw, and I'm pretty sure that this is who it was. It was either Andre Berto, or it was Shawn Porter talking to Terence Crawford after the fight when Andre Ward had beaten Sergey Kovalev for the second time. And you can overhear him say, hey, look, Terence, I'm pretty sure that this was Andre Berto. I need to go back, but it could have been Shawn, where he said, look, it's not that people don't want to fight you, Terence. It's because people don't want to put up with all that BS from Bob Arum. So, if you get away from Bob Arum, dude, you'll be in the mix for all these fights. And Shawn Porter is just telling the truth in that regard, man. If Terence Crawford switches over to the PBC, there's going to be a bunch of really good fights for Terence Crawford for a series of years. And he'll have good fights whether or not he wins or he loses. Against Shawn Porter, I'm telling you, though, there's a significant chance he's going to lose that. Because I do not believe for nothing that he's going to be able to fight the same way that he fought against Igis Kalvanakis or Kell Brook and be getting caught with shots by Shawn Porter and then just say, what I'll do is I'll just switch to southpaw now and I'll just let bombs away and I'll just bombs away on Shawn and think that he's going to get away with a win. Shawn Porter is probably technically the best fighter that he has fought experientially. He's definitely the best fight that Terence Crawford would ever have fought. And it's a fight that should be made. But the reason why, Terence isn't going to be big to make that fight is because Terence knows full well, despite the things that he has said in the past or just recently, he knows Shawn Porter is a top welterweight. He knows Shawn Porter isn't Jeff Horn. He's not Amir Khan. He's not Igis Kalvanakis. He's not those guys. Bob and Terence Crawford knows it. Terence Crawford just wants to, I believe, clear out those last couple fights, with the guaranteed money that he has with Bob Arum, and then proceed, I hope, to becoming a free agent. If after those two fights he re-signs with Top Rank, you can completely just flush Terence Crawford down the toilet. It's just absolutely not worth paying attention to him. It's a complete facade if he stays one more time, right? Because then it's not just Bob, it's Bud. The fact that Bud re-signed for him 2 years ago, that was kind of questionable, right? Because he knew that there was so much more opportunity for fights to be made with the PBC. But Bud decided not to do it, and Bud got a very big contract with guaranteed money to stay with Top Rank. But when that is up, if he stays with Top Rank, and because you'd have to assume to stay with Top Rank, he's got to take a pay cut, then the guy's just a duck artist, and that's just what it is. And he is trying to act like he's the best fighter in the world, but don't actually want to prove it. Because getting in there with Shawn Porter would be an absolutely terrific step towards proving that you really are that dude and not just somebody that is super athletic, that whenever you're in trouble against a world-class level fighter, right? Now, all these guys Terence Crawford fights are world-class, but not upper echelon, not upper echelon welterweights. But, if he gets, anyway, you get my point, man. Terence Crawford right now, just looking at him, he looks like the real deal. With the fight with Shawn Porter will actually prove it. And that is a better fight than Kell Brook, even though Kell Brook beat Shawn Porter, because we all know the Kell Brook that beat Shawn Porter went completely out of existence in the middle of the Gennady Golovkin fight. And then then they doubled down on the destruction in his next fight. So anyway, that's my take on the matter. You let me know what you think. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. Again, if you're going to be at the Errol Spence Jr. fight in Dallas, if you're going to be on the floor, make sure you say what's up to me. And I'll, because I'm not going to be able to obviously recognize you guys' faces. You'll recognize my face easier than I'll recognize yours. So make sure you say what's up at the fight. And anyway, that's what I think. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out. Peace.